welcome to the Accidental Fatherhood podcast with James and Ash. We started this podcast because there isn't a lot of support out there for us guys. We're going through a pretty tough time right now.
Yeah, accidents, not mistakes.
Unplanned pregnancies and new relationships and what is going on with our lives. So we're trying to bring a little bit of support through some awesome special guests, and
It's a place to commiserate together.
we are rolling. Welcome everyone to the Accidental Fatherhood podcast. You're here with James and Ash as usual, and we've got our very special guest today, Lissy Abrahams.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining us. Would you like to give us a little brief introduction as to why you're here and what you do? What's your specialty?
Why I'm here? Well, you rang me, so and we'll see what happens after that. My specialty is I'm a couple and individual psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and I've had couples as my passion for the last 15 years, trained in London as a therapist there with a 4 years master's, and it's just been my absolute world, the land of couples, because we don't actually know how hard it is for people behind closed doors.
So what is it, a psychoanalytic?
Psychoanalytic, psychotherapist, and I work with couples in Sydney. I have a clinic where we have 9 therapists at the moment, and we're all helping people of different ages. So my whole world is the therapy world. It's about how to get my message across to people, how to help relationships, how to help people individually, and help people improve their lives. A lot of shit goes down actually behind closed doors, and I really do believe that home can be one of the most dangerous places on earth. You know, people talk about Rio, Bolivia, wherever, but actually I think behind closed doors we don't really know what's going on truly.
That's a really great perspective, because you don't sometimes think about because a lot of time people don't share with you either what's going on, and you have no idea what's going on in that intimate 2-person relationship at home ever.
And then we also have the beautiful images on Instagram and Facebook, and everyone looks so fabulous and we're having fun in a swimming pool or at the beach or at a barbecue. But I know another side, which is a lot of those photos are often put out because people are, quite unhappy and they want to present a particular image. It's that there's so much shame for people not being in a happy relationship, and it's just most people aren't talking about it. Some people might talk about it with a friend, but most people don't openly discuss the extent of how harrowing it can be.
Yeah, and that's what's good for us with this podcast and even with each other catching up every week, because we get to kind of at least share with each other some of those more difficult challenges we've had during the week. And it's just nice to have someone to listen to you and kind of understand as well, and know that, their life's not perfect and my life's not perfect. And it is actually, relationships take work, right? And, and it's about having that understanding of each other and learning to communicate better, right?
I think it's a constant endeavour, to be honest. I think because we're changing across time. So when we meet somebody, we're going to go on a life journey, and we are certainly not going to be the same at the beginning and in the middle and at the end, however long they go for. So we have to keep curious about our partner, finding out who they are at different stages and ages across life.
And the relationship evolves too. That love can deepen and grow, and the connection can change, and there's all those things going on. So it really is this thing in flux, right, that you just have to kind of navigate and try and understand, and kind of that growth that's going on. And I'm going to plug your book really quickly, because I saw you wrote this amazing book, which is why I called you. I'm like, Lissy, you got to come on, because I feel like this book is going to be so valuable for so many people out there. Relationship reset.
Have you read it, James?
I have not read it yet. I've not read it yet. I've had a lot going on. I haven't read it yet, but I really do want to read it. How to Break the Cycle of Conflict and Create Secure and Lasting Love, which I think is a beautiful title. And Relationship Reset. I actually like the design of the cover too. Being a graphic designer, I think you've done a really good job there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I can't really take any credit for the name or the cover. That's all Pan Macmillan. They were absolute geniuses. So I'm very grateful for them coming up with it. It
looks well thought out and polished, and not just chucked together. There's a lot of thought and intent in there, and I think it feels great for the subject of the book in terms of the way it looks visually.
That's great. Thank you.
From a professional. Yeah, it's awesome. But cool. tell us more about it. I'm really
okay. So I started this book I came up with the idea in July last year, and we were in lockdown in Sydney.
I was going to say, you pumped the book out.
Yeah, I did. I pumped it out. I had a chance to really write it and go for it. So it was quite a journey, actually. So I have a friend who mentioned that I could contact her publisher when I mentioned to this friend that I wanted to write a book. And so I did. And within a very short time, it all started to be, everything got put in place. It was a very organic process. There were a lot of people suffering in COVID. So what we had in Sydney and Melbourne with the lockdowns is whatever was locked in that house was locked in. And you can imagine it's like kind of pouring concrete over it. So if you're in a happy home and you want to spend time with your partner and then there's lockdown and you've got to spend that time and go for walks and hang out with the kids or do some homeschooling, that's fine. You know, it was great for some people. Yet for other people, if there were any cracks in their relationship, being stuck together in a space where they don't know how to work through conflict, where they've got all their kind of defences up and they're in very small radius. We could only go 5 kilometres at a time and we could only go out for exercise. It's actually weird going back in time thinking about it, but it was a weird sort of alternate universe.
I actually loved it.
Well, I'm an introvert as well. I didn't mind having nothing to do and just chilling at home.
But it depends what's locked in. So if you're happy in your home, then it's great.
Well, we're also up in Queensland. So.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of lockdowns up here, so we got
we were very fortunate.
Yeah, pretty lightly.
But when all the gyms shut down and everybody's out walking along the river, like when I was in Brisbane, it was the best.
Well, we actually had some beaches shut as well. So we were it was the first lockdown, we had beaches close and we weren't allowed to sit in parks. We actually had to all keep moving.
Yeah, we had
everything for exercise. It was weird. But I really knew that this was the time to write a book and I was very fortunate the publishers understood the experience of COVID and really wanted to help people as well. So I wrote it very quickly. I wrote it in 3 months, my first draft.
Wow.
I just put my bum down and took my ADHD medication. And got my hyperfocus on and loved it. It was an absolute privilege. I did work really hard with myself to set up that 3-month period though, because I set a very tight deadline with the publisher. I did buy an extra month to say, look, just in case something happens, if I get COVID, I need backup time. But I spoke to them about having a 3-month period. I'd never written a book before, so I didn't know how it would work, but I just thought, let's go, give it that period. But I made a decision up front to really work with my ego, to not go into victim-y positions, to not become a martyr to writing a book and make a drama out of it. So each time I would actually just remind myself it's an honour and a privilege to have a book deal and to be in this position, and that just kept my mind open to the experience. Yeah. So it wasn't closing down in self-pity.
And what was the main drive for writing the book in the first place?
Yeah, so there were a lot of couples who were locked in. And I didn't know how long it was going to go for at that point because we went into lockdown on the 26th of June last year, the second lockdown. And by early July, I had the thought that I'd like to do something. So I didn't know how long it would go for. And it was really, it isn't a COVID book. It's actually not even mentioned in there. It's all the same material. But I just felt like there was nothing that was really thinking about couples in the way I think about them in my consulting room. There wasn't anywhere that had this book that others could access. And being one therapist at a time when we've got an absolute mental health crisis, I thought people can't access the help they need. So I wanted to put one resource out, for now, to help people.
To help people on a larger scale.
Yeah, and it's been great because I'm getting messages from all over Australia. I'm getting people telling me that, rural Victoria, all sorts of places that they would never normally get that kind of help, but they're accessing it. And one person who contacted me on Instagram was saying, I've bought them for my friends because they actually understood the enormity of going on a journey. Because the book is all about it's for an individual journey into how we relate. So it's not how to change your partner or how to get them to do things for you. It's nothing like that, or it's nothing to do with love languages and making cups of tea and writing little notes in lunchboxes. That's not what this is. This is how do I think? How do I relate to my partner, but why do I do that? Why do I really have these expectations, opinions and values, and what am I imposing on them?
So it's sort of like breaking yourself down. So it's how to break yourself down and a guide to that so that you can figure out why you actually are wanting things from your partner or certain
Absolutely.
things.
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
Ash.
amazing.
Yeah, that's
cool.
exactly it.
That's so cool.
And so it's looking at why we fight with our partner, why we create stories, lots of ego narratives and where that all comes from. And then all about fight or flight responses, because we're constantly, for people who have conflict, they're getting triggered all the time. So really breaking it down, as you say, so that you can take yourself on a journey through your mind and body in relationships.
Yeah, so cool. How many of those things do you find are created in childhood? I read something really quickly in the back there, and I went, "Oh," before we were filming. But do you find that a lot, and do you find these habits are formed from parents, and it's like sort of getting handed down almost?
Absolutely, and there's a lot of research to back that up. There's a body of research called attachment theory. I'm not sure you've heard of it.
Yep.
And they've done a lot of research into what becomes encoded in the mind of a child. It's the relational wiring that happens at that time, and it's all sort of what we're mostly wired up by 12 to 18 months of age. So you've got a little kid, you've got a little one who is being wired up.
12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months.
Wow, that's really earlier than I thought.
Yeah,
you
so
got to get on this.
Get on it right. I wish I'd known. My
Yeah.
poor kids. Sorry, girls. It happens really early. So by 12 to 18 months, your child's kind of relational template or a program that they're going to use throughout life is pretty much formed.
Wow.
And it's really based on, are their parents around enough? Are they present enough? Not just around physically, but are you paying attention? Are you responding to them in a timely enough fashion? Now, we're not talking about perfection here. We're talking about not leaving a baby too long in wet nappies or pooey nappies or too hungry. They haven't got a lot of needs that are different.
Yeah.
It's just a couple of things, but you've got to kind of get to them in a timely enough manner so that they don't get into that continuously distressed state that no one's there for me.
Yeah.
Because that's going to become traumatic for them.
Yeah.
I heard Gabor Mate on Joe Rogan's podcast the other day, and he said they did a study with loving their children, like a study where they loved their children a lot and when they didn't love their children as much. And he goes, basically the result of the study is you can't love your children too much. You can't, there's no such thing.
Can't spoil them with love. You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can spoil them with stuff, but you can't spoil them with love.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So you're in a great place. About to have a baby.
I know.
It's
they're
really
going to
good
be
hear.
loved. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to. I've got a little nephew, which I've spoken about before, but just getting to know him has been a really beautiful experience in my life, and I can't wait. It must be so different when it's actually your child, because I have so much love for that kid. So yeah, it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to the, everything, all the experiences. Yeah.
Do bubs, going back to what we were talking about before, do bubs pick up on your relationship with your partner?
Yeah, absolutely.
In that 18-month sort of period as well, and how you guys and how you interact with them? Is that something to be mindful of?
Absolutely. The thing that they encode the most is really the individual relationship with the parent. That's even more important than what they're viewing for the couple.
Yeah.
But they are still watching, and they're absorbing the vibe, the energy of it, the happiness of it, the distress of it. Now, that's not to say we all have to kind of float around on cloud nine and pretend we're happy when we're not, because there's nothing it's not about perfection. They can tolerate where there are ruptures and repairs, but if they're frightened too much, if they're on edge too much, it's affecting their physiology, and that's going to cause anxiety later, or clinginess, or when they've reached, if they're too anxious, they can sometimes become very much in their own little world where they cut off and don't look to their parents for help. If they don't feel they can get their attention enough, they can stop looking for them and seeking out their help when they're distressed. So I call it that they're in a little fortress for one.
Yeah.
You know those people where they just go into it and they don't talk when they're upset and they just work it all out, and then later they'll calm down and go off on their own. But kids can do that from, we can see that on footage between 12 to 18 months, that they're already having this sort of pseudo-independence. It's not real independence.
Yeah.
It's not a resilience. It's a defensive position.
Is it like stonewalling, like putting up a stone wall and just retreating? Or is that a different term?
It's kind of like that, but it's more because of the retreat, that they don't have any expectation that anyone's there for them to talk to.
Yeah, right.
That anyone's interested. How am I doing? But then they might meet someone who's really interested, and at first that can be very exciting as an adult, but then later on they don't know what to do with it at all. We all sort of tend to retreat back to who we are. So we have to work that through again. And that's why I've written the book, because we can live in the land of our defences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not who we are, it's who we become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many children do you have?
I have 2.
2 children?
Yeah.
And they were both planned?
They were.
Just checking.
I was so lucky.
Yeah, you are.
I feel lucky every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're now nearly 23 and nearly 21.
So do you have any advice? Do you have any advice? I'm not going to bring up any circumstances.
Oh no, I was gonna say teenage pregnancy.
I was
for it.
going to say, do you have any advice for people like us who have just found out their partner's pregnant and just navigating that new relationship that we've I'm navigating it as best I can at the moment. I haven't had any professional advice, but what advice would you give someone like us who are navigating that new relationship? The child's come on. It's gone from like really light and fun to, you said don't say heavy because of pregnant women. Yeah. But it's gotten really heavy, really quickly, really serious. So, yeah, what advice would you give
James?
Start a podcast. What advice would I give? I think it's just really about acknowledging the minute you become a parent, and that starts in utero, it gets serious. Mm-hmm. You know, all of that sort of thinking about, can we afford this? Are we in the right position? Have we got the right housing? Is the relationship strong enough? Especially when you're not expecting the pregnancy. You know, there's a lot that you've sort of walked into without the planning. Thank goodness babies take 9 months, because it gives you 9 months of planning. But a lot of couples have had the conversations prior to that around, you know, how to navigate. What are we going to do? How will we navigate this?
Yeah, and how would we work as a couple to bring the child up and kind of work on those logistics as well,
or even pretend logistics, because no one really knows until the baby's born what's going to happen and what's going to change internally.
Yeah.
But I think what you probably, I don't know, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but it gets you into that territory where all of a sudden you need to be able to support people, and that gets really serious.
You had that, didn't you? That like the drive to I need to provide.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I feel that as well. For us, I think the romance died very quickly. Mm-hmm. And not intentionally, but I know my partner was feeling very kind of anxious about the whole thing, and there's a lot of hormones going on, and it kind of went so serious that we're and questioning the relationship, and are we doing the right thing? And there was a lot of that being thrown around, which made me really anxious, because I actually really liked this girl. I did see a plan for us to do something like this down the track. So it was but it was still a shock for me, and it was definitely a shock for her. So she was really struggling to kind of navigate it all. And that made things a little bit hard on our relationship. Even though I'm all in. I'm going to be here. Let's do this. I just tried to be that tree, and just, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But it's been hard. It's been, it's not been a smooth ride, and there has been sometimes negative feelings around things that when challenges come up. And, we're both just navigating the best we can, and we have so much respect. And I do believe we both love and care for each other, but sometimes it's not expressed because, we're both kind of, it's very serious, Well,
you got into the land of defensiveness, I'm sure, somewhere. Where you went from probably being more open and discussing things and alive as a couple, it's quite a traumatic thing to find out you're pregnant when it's not on your radar, I think. For a lot of people, it's it takes you off your trajectory and moves you completely somewhere else in a very, within a second. And it's coming. The baby's coming. You can't stop time. Yep. You can't refocus. But you two lost your honeymoon period. You lost your beginning.
Yeah.
And you were always going to. We know that, James.
Yeah. I know that.
You were always going to, because, you both had fun.
Yeah.
And with that fun, it wasn't really an accident. It was a risk.
Yeah.
And it was always a possibility. It's just, it was confirmed that, the chip went that way, not the other way.
Yeah. And I feel like, when you're in a couple and you go through those hard times, you can always reflect on, I remember that time we went on holiday together, and we've got this kind of, you've got that relationship equity, I would say, or something like that. Like you've got the fun times to reflect on and go, we're going through hard times, but, it's not forever. I know we've had these great times before, but we haven't had we don't have those memories and those experiences together that gives us that really strong foundation of trust and assuredness.
Yeah.
So
You do have a baby coming though.
So the baby's bringing. To be honest, the baby is bringing us closer together. And we did decide that we're putting too much pressure on ourselves to be the romantic couple. So we decided to just put that down for now and just really build on a really strong friendship and support for each other.
Love it.
And then grow together and hopefully that will come back to us once the pressure's off and we get to know each other again and what that dynamic with the kid is like as well. So what advice would you give someone just finding out we're pregnant? Is there anything you would?
I would suggest some therapy, actually, couples therapy, because it could really help some of the blocks. And I love the fact you're working on your relationship. That's awesome. You're not just going into little silos and doing your own thing until the baby pops out. But I would actually recommend some therapy probably sooner rather than later, because there's a way of joining up and really connecting. You don't have to be a couple to have a child. I mean, my older daughter, she said to me, I think that friends should have babies and that you share the baby. Forget the whole relationship thing. If it's 1 in 2 people 1 in 3 marriages don't survive, and we're all bringing babies into these relationships anyway, what's the point? So you may as well just have a child with a friend. I don't think that's such a bad idea.
What a clever, how old is your daughter?
She's 23 nearly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clever. So, yeah, that's a good idea.
I think it is. So I think there's lots of other ways. In the same way a lot of people aren't getting married anymore, I think we will start rethinking how are we doing this, because that model, it's a hit and miss if it's going to work.
Yeah, and I felt as a guy, I felt very disempowered at the beginning because we don't have much of a choice in what's happening. We had a choice then, obviously, when the conception, but afterwards we don't have a lot of choice. And then for me, I felt very vulnerable around what's going to happen when the baby comes, like, as well. So I went in, I had a lot of fear coming up for me, like, is she going to run off with my kid? And, these weird, not that she would ever do that, but these unrealistic fears were started to come up, and I felt really vulnerable about the situation.
I don't think they're unrealistic.
No?
I think they're actually spot on, because you didn't know her, you didn't have the years of the relationship, the foundation to know actually what is she like in this situation. So you actually didn't know. She wasn't from Sydney.
Yeah.
She wasn't from the Gold Coast. You didn't actually know.
Yeah.
So I think they're not unfounded at all. I think they're realistic, and I think you had to just go through and work that out together.
Yeah.
But I do think you had choices.
Yeah, I did. I
think you had choices, and I think part of the choice is, what kind of father do I want to be? Do I want to be someone who pushes for a termination, or do I want to be someone who stands by, or do I just want to be a check or a bank transfer every 2 weeks?
Yeah,
I think we
do have that choice.
You have a choice, and and you exercised it, saying, "I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm all in," even though it's got trickiness written all over it.
Yeah,
I think you exercised your choice.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I'd never thought of it that way at all. And I think as well with your partner, we'll probably speak to this, but the communication part is a really big thing. And even though Alex and I can talk really well together and we can communicate really well, I've got this funny story that happened on last Sunday. I was a little bit sad because I was going through a bit of victim mentality. I felt like I was being unappreciated, and I was just really, really sad on Sunday. And Alex, I told Alex about this, and I can share everything with Alex. She's very good. She takes it all on, and she doesn't argue with me. She just like, okay, and she tries to understand. She's an amazing person for that. And it's a really strong quality of hers. But she, at the end, on Sunday afternoon, she walked in with some treats in her hand, in one hand, and this pillow in the other. I told you I had a pillow story.
Yeah.
She walked in with this pillow and these treats, and she mentioned during the week that my pillows look really old and gross. You know how you got a favourite pillow? I've got this pillow.
From when you were 4.
It's not that old.
Blanky.
It's not that old.
Blanky.
But that's just that pillow that's just, it's just great. Anyway, but it was old and gross. Anyway, she comes in with these treats in one hand and pillow in the other. And I thought, she goes, I got a present for you. I'm like, oh, thanks. And I thought she gave me the treats. And I'm like, oh, thanks for the treats. And they were delicious. And I'm a bit of a sweet tooth, so it's like perfect. That's cheered me up. Then she put this pillow on the kitchen bench, and I started asking questions about the pillow, like, oh yeah, where'd you get that from? She goes, oh, it's a bit of impromptu purchase. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Anyway, I got it out of the box, and I just had a bit of a lay on it just to, see what it was like, see what she bought, thought nothing of it. She went out to dinner with one of her friends, and I went to bed because I was tired, and I put the pillow in her pillowcase for her because I'm like, oh, she'll want to have a new pillow when she goes to bed, so I'll put it in the pillowcase. Anyway, I wake up in the morning. I'm like, how was your new pillow? And she goes, well, you mustn't have liked it. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I bought that pillow for you. Oh. And I'm like, oh. No idea. And I said, that is a perfect illustration.
You guys suck at communicating with the presents. When they first got together, was it Valentine's Day?
It was her birthday, I think.
Was it the card that you forgot?
Yeah, it was the card. It was
Valentine's Day card. Yeah. James moved into a new place. Completely forgot to check the mail for a good number of weeks.
Yeah.
And then
she wrote this beautiful card.
Got it delivered.
And I hadn't seen it.
James was thinking...
And this was after...
this girl, who's this chick? She hasn't even done anything.
Yeah, and I
just not that into you.
No, and then I had... The first trimester was really hard for us, like really hard. It's like I say baby bomb went off and it just pushed us apart. And we had real trouble connecting and finding ourselves again. And it's taken 6 months to find... I mean, we're fairly close now, but it's taken a long time to find ourselves again. And the first trimester was terrible. It was really challenging for both of us, and I felt really... It was like we were social distancing. It was like I didn't see her. I saw her like maybe 5 times in the whole first trimester. Like she lived away. And anyway, I thought she didn't love me. I thought she didn't want anything to do with me. I'm like, all I hear, because she's hurt people. She was like kind of going through a lot, and she was struggling a lot, and nothing nice was ever coming out of her mouth. It was always kind of quite negative or judgmental. And I know it wasn't intentional, and I was just... I felt like I just need to be patient and not take things too personally. But then she goes, you didn't even say anything about the card I bought you. And I'm like, I went to the post and I got it out. This beautiful card written by her, expressing how lucky she is to have met me. And I'm like, oh, you do like me. Because it didn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it goes to show that literally her coming in with those presents and saying and just guiding me with this other present just made me think that wasn't... And
you just went straight for the snacks.
Yeah, it was just a really... it was a really good illustration of how poorly we can miscommunicate with each other on such a simple thing like a pillow.
It's a really important one. I mean, therapy would be great because you said a bomb went off. And
is that bad terminology?
Well, no. I mean, that to me speaks to the trauma of finding out about the baby and what you both went through. And without kind of the more of the rhythm of the relationship, you're making it up as you go along. Now, couples are usually making it up. If they're not pregnant, they're still making it up. But you've got this pressure. You've had this enormous pressure to kind of make this work, to become a family unit, when neither of you were ready for that. And so it's great that you're doing the work together and talking, but it is a really big shock. And, Ash, you've got your gorgeous one and happy days with that, but it is hard. It's a big blow to where you think you're heading in life, but for you to suddenly be in that place where you're having to navigate a relationship, and it became really serious at that point, so you lose your kind of freedom to just play.
Yeah,
and it takes a long time.
Yeah, does it, Ash? Where is it for you? Like, what would you say in terms of
we're good
time?
now. We're great
now.
Great, but that's probably recent
since
this podcast. But definitely at the start of the podcast, I was very drained, and a lot of that was on me as well. So this last week, since medicating for ADHD, it's been amazing. Delisha even said, we don't fight anymore. And I was like, this is what it's like to come home and just get along.
To just be,
Yeah, so a lot of that was just me basically, but not even picking up on the cues, I guess. But yeah, even the first 3 months, I mean, and we were a little bit different to you guys. Like, you guys are quite financially stable, where we didn't know where we were going to live. I didn't have a job when we got pregnant. Talisha went for a job, got a job, but then they found out she was pregnant, so they lowballed her a contract, and then so she didn't take the job. So we were financially under a lot of pressure. So adding finance issues on top of just, like you said, getting to know each other, and then dealing with a pregnant person that's also nervous, I guess. That was challenging. But
How long had you been together?
3 months.
Just 3 months. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also a stranger. We have to be honest.
Yeah.
At the beginning, everyone's on their best behaviour. Everyone's trying to look as lovely and good looking and be everything. And, you share these lovely intimate moments and a bit of vulnerability. But it's a bit of a show.
Yep.
Let's be honest.
The mask, yeah.
It's a mask. It's a bit of a show. And so to actually still be in the show time, then finding out you're pregnant, that's a big deal because you haven't had those moments yet of, oh, this is who I really am. This is me not trying. This is me tired. This is me when I don't tidy the house. This is me when I don't actually give a shit that you've had a big day at work.
Yeah.
Because I'm caught up in my own world.
And that's a scary thing because we've had a small amount of good times and then it's been tough and challenging for the remaining. It's like, and the hormones are there as well. Is this the real her?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a really great question.
And I know it's not.
Yeah.
But those thoughts are going through my head is like, is this the real her?
You've probably seen her at the worst.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
this is
it's like Marilyn Monroe said, right? You got to if you don't love me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Well, the thing is it her? It's her under
Immense.
a really difficult situation. Yeah, that's her in this state.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that you've gone through your journey and you've gone through yours, Ash, and I go through mine in lots of different ways. Who are we when there's a blowtorch at the belly? Then you find out.
It's an interesting.
So that's what pregnancy's like, guys. If you're wondering, it's like a blowtorch to the belly.
Well, it's just, but I think the way that you've both been with women not that long and then finding out that they're pregnant, it's straight into the territory of trauma for them.
Yeah.
And that's what there's this scramble. Who are we with this? And then if you weren't working, Ash, that's another major stress on top of it.
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and as you said before as well, I felt like on Sunday I was grieving the freedom, the life. I even said to Alex, I feel like I'm just grieving today.
Is that because we went out on Saturday for a couple of drinks?
Might be a little bit fragile and hungover,
I just meant like you got that taste of freedom.
No.
For the night, It was like we went out, we were home by 8.
It was a big night.
Maybe it's because you were home by 8 o'clock, Ash. And that was the lack of freedom that James felt a bit, that felt sad the next day.
Yeah, it's coming for you, James.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just grieving the old life and the old. And I wasn't happy. I was very sad about the relationship and where we were, and until we had a really good chat about it, I just felt really sad that day, and I felt like I was grieving, just a little bit of grief there of the trauma and the old me that is no longer. But yeah,
It's so great you can talk about that.
yeah,
It's really huge, because I think if more parents, whether they meet and fall pregnant quickly, whatever it is, I think all of us, there is some grief in the life that we leave behind. And I love the fact that you just speak about that, because so many people don't. I know for a lot of women who they've often wanted a child and fallen pregnant and done it in that way, when they've been high achievers at work, there is nothing as awful for a lot of these women than having a child, because there's no one at home saying, great job, or here's your money to make you feel like you've worked hard. It's just, it can feel such a demotion for women. And there's a lot of grief for them, huge amount of grief about what they're not doing, that they're not at work and they have to be at home with a baby. So, and they don't know that's coming.
yeah,
There's not enough preparation for that. So I think the fact that you're feeling the grief is great. It's not fun, but it's great.
yeah.
The more you can access that, the healthier it is.
Yeah, and acknowledge it and move through it and kind of accept it as well. Accept the new life.
Yeah, because you don't want to resent the child
I don't.
when they come along.
Oh man, this child's going to get so much love.
I know that.
There'll be no resentment at all.
It's not even so much about the child itself. It's the situation of you in that space.
Yeah.
Where did free James go?
Yeah.
And James, who wanted to date this person and have some time to get there, not just bang, you're in that world.
Yeah, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I had to plan. I had the plan.
Well, that's what I was meaning before. This whole idea that it's an accident. It's so not, because for someone who has spent their life planning and being a perfectionist and living life in a kind of fantasy of control, there is no better lesson for you than tipping the whole lot upside down and saying, actually, not planned, not chosen, but actually playing with fire on that passionate night with a lot of dopamine surging through the system and reward centers going bing, bing, bing like Vegas. Exciting. You both took a chance, which it's not that I wouldn't say it's a mistake. I think you needed this because there's nothing like a perfectionist getting a huge lesson about how imperfect life is and how survivable it is, that you can't actually get everything, all your ducks in a row and create that perfect relationship, because maybe if you had tried and it hadn't been, then you might not have stayed with Alex to have a child, not this child, but a child, because it might not have been perfect enough, this relationship.
Yeah.
And so this is just like,
that's the story of my life. Story of my life.
Yeah, right.
So it's been, the universe gave me a good kick up the bum.
Yeah, just a lesson in things not being perfect, a lesson in adapt, grow, change.
And I'm so accepting of the situation and what's going on, and I can't wait to be a dad. Like there's all of that, but it's and the challenges that go with that, I'm taking it on. So
it's awesome.
Yeah. So apart from counselling and therapy, what other tools could you give young parents, fathers, couples to navigate communication and that stuff?
Okay. I have to say that whatever you think you're fighting about at home, you're not really fighting about. If you ever think about all the differences you have, take a step back and ask yourself, what's the fear? What am I frightened of here? Because more often when they're accidental fathers or planned fathers or any situation, we can get quite spooked by our partner. And I think, James, in some of the things you already said, I can tell there's a little bit of spooking with Alex and where she goes in her mind. But taking a step back and asking yourself, what's the fear? Because if we can actually manage fear inside of ourselves, we've got this whole relationship stuff licked. Like, seriously, if we can manage our partner being really different from us, having different expectations in life, loving us in a way that we don't necessarily want, but that's all they can do. Like, if we can just not be frightened of everything that this other person represents, I think that's the biggest gift. So to just step back and say, what am I frightened of here? Instead of having a go at them or becoming too devastated by a look on their face or their whatever. Everyone's operating by their own relationship program, our template, like we talked about with attachment theory. Ours are always going to be different from our partner. So this is the same as when you have a child. It's always going to be different. That child is never going to be you. So please don't use the term mini-me. I really hate it. Kill that off. Let's steal that right now. They're not mini-me. They are their own unique being with their own wants and desires and wishes. And to just really allow each other to be separate. We somehow do this thing when we meet someone, we love that they're this individual and we think you're fabulous, but then we don't actually like that they are an individual. We want them to be like we want them to be, to operate according to our relational template and to bring me the coffee I want, or to think of me in the afternoon and send me a message, or to whatever. To celebrate my birthday with the knowing what gift to give me. Like, I hate birthday presents, but for that reason, it's too much pressure. If I want something, I'll tell them what I want, and that's the end of it, or make me a card. There's just so much pressure, and guess what I should give you, and I hate it. So it's just about celebrating that unique individual, but asking yourself, why does that difference frighten me? And I think that is probably the biggest gift. Why am I scared of someone who doesn't pack the dishwasher the way I like, or doesn't want to get up in the middle of the night because they're exhausted? Mm-hmm. Why do I stop seeing them as an individual? We don't own them.
Yeah.
But we kind of do this thing that says my partner, my wife, my husband, and then we do a mergey thing that they should be like us, and it doesn't work.
Got it?
Got it.
Yeah, amazing. Can I pick your brain about ADHD?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Oh, please.
Yeah, cool. So you mentioned before when you wrote the book that you took some ADD medication. You weren't just popping pills that you found or bought from someone. You have ADHD.
I do,
If people are listening regularly, they'll find out that I've literally just been diagnosed a week and a half ago.
Amazing.
So, do you have any tips? Because, I mean, for me, really quickly, this last week has been a game changer with work, life, even helping out with James and stuff on the podcast. It's just it's incredible, and it's like someone has taken the autopilot off and the captain's come back to the
that's
to
such
the
a
plane
great
and been
description.
like,
I love that.
yeah, being like, whoa, like, yeah.
That's amazing. That's huge. I totally relate to that. So yes, I do have ADHD as well. I was diagnosed about 6 years ago when my daughter was diagnosed. They often say when you find the child, look for the adult.
Yep.
So there's usually a parent somewhere, or uncle, aunt somewhere.
Yeah, they said that to me as well.
Okay.
They said, who in your family has it?
And then we're all normal.
Yeah.
So in terms of ADHD, the way I look at it, it's an absolute gift, but there's a thief. And the gift of ADHD is that it can be a really creative mind, a spontaneous mind. It's got a lovely wavelength for a lot of people, an energetic kind of wavelength. It's quite zippy. Yep. And people don't care if you talk over them. You know, it's like its own radio frequency, which I love. Zippy, fast, doesn't have to keep up with a storyline, can move over in any direction.
Yep.
So I love the mind of ADHDers. The thing is, there's a thief. The thief is that there can sometimes be something that's grinding against you and grinding against the movement of the family and what others need. And for a lot of people, having a child is the most exhausting thing when they've got ADHD, especially undiagnosed, because they're just not getting enough sleep. And it is maddening when they're woken up in the night. And I'm not even saying you're getting up to feed or anything. I don't know, Ash. But for a lot of people, just not having enough sleep is really hard because it's already on a tired brain. Yep. The ADHD brain is one that is more limited in sort of vitality.
Yeah.
And awakeness, yeah.
Yeah, one of my friends we were playing, we met up for a coffee, and we were talking about his girls and how clever they are. And I was like, give us some tips, like give me some tips for my daughter when she gets to that age. And he's like, well, we just we have a coffee in the morning, they'll have breakfast, and we played Wordle together. And I was like, what's Wordle? Have you heard of Wordle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, every day.
So it's seven-letter word?
Five,
yeah. There you go. 5-letter word. I've played it a lot. But he's like, it's New York Times, just search Wordle. Yep. And he goes, just put a 5-letter word in. I could not think of a 5-letter word. And this guy's known me for years. And, well, it was actually Bart who was on the podcast. And I was like, what the hell? I'm like, and all I could think of was like, this guy must think I'm a freaking dumbass. Like, he must be going, what have I taken? Or, you know, it was like I could not think at all for the life of me. And then he's like, you know, just type in lucky or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, lucky. And he goes, yes, I see this. The U is acceptable, so think of a word with U. And I was like, oh, and I couldn't think of any word. I was unable to. It was
to access the filing cabinet.
It was like it was gone.
Mm.
Yeah, so, and it was on the spot as well. And maybe for a lot of people with ADHD, being on the spot reminds them of school. And that was not always a great time for people because, you know, at the time that your natural intelligence and memory and capacity to hold it all in mind, it reaches a point for a lot of people around year 9, if they're lucky, but they all just start to dip. And then the maths is gone and all sorts of things happen. So being put on the spot, going, oh, I just don't even know, it might just be an old kind of response.
Yeah, don't know. It was, but yeah, I was like, oh my God. But now it's like the medication really helps.
Have you played Wordle since?
Yes, I did okay.
It's a good measure of.
Is this working?
This is working. Yes.
Is it working?
Yeah, I went home after he got the word, and I got it in the first go. I was like,
what?
He already showed me the word.
In terms of any tips, there's a fantastic book by someone in America called Peter Shankman. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called Faster Than Normal.
I've read it.
Yeah, he's got some great tips in there.
Years ago.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Told me to read it.
Yeah, he's also got a podcast and things as well. But his book is a really good one for ADHDers. Got some great tips in there and things like how to get your dopamine levels up in it really quickly. So even coming in here, it's quite late coming in, and I could feel my energy levels going. I thought, I'll just go and do some star jumps. That's from his book. I didn't do them, but it just like, how do I kind of get my sort of self up? Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
So even with medication, you can still find these ways of just sort of boosting it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And do any of your children have ADD?
Yeah, my younger daughter does.
Yeah, right. And how's that for you? Is it challenge? Like, what does that look like?
It's great now. It was a nightmare, I have to say. The first 14 years, I could not understand what had happened to my beautiful girl. Like, her developmental trajectory just didn't go in a direction I thought at all. She was a really bright kid, really curious, loved learning. And then all of a sudden everything was hard. And she was just, I don't know if you remember Roadrunner, the cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, beep, beep, Roadrunner. And everything was with the scramble and the dust behind it. And everything was hard work. And she felt like she was always grinding against us. School was hard. And I didn't think she was going to be able to stay at school. I thought that she would need something else, and she's a really bright kid. And so it was quite shocking to think, where would your next step be? Because she's not disabled enough to go to a special needs school, but she wasn't doing well at all. She was failing and not keeping up. And I was really worried about her. And then I was just having a conversation with my partner, who's a psychologist, and he mentioned something about ADHD, and then I looked into it and I said, oh my goodness, it's her. And that was one of the best days of my life, because then I thought, now we can do something to help her, and that changed everything. I could understand all of her behaviours, all the scrambling, all the difficulties with concentrating. I took her to therapists before that. They had no idea. They were saying, she's just procrastinating. I mean, that is an ADHD ding-dong moment.
Oh, yeah, I left everything to the last minute. Like, I would do my homework in the class before the homework was due. So I'd get to school and I'd do the first period's homework before school.
You're a crammer.
Yeah, it wasn't cramming.
Cramming it is.
I just needed that pressure.
A deadline. It's always the external pressure. You're right. That's it.
So when did you find out when were you diagnosed?
I was about 6 years ago.
So that after
my daughter. So it was okay,
so
this
it's like
is interesting.
Everything's making sense now.
Yeah, and then I started to look back at my life and go, oh shit, here we go. Now I can see all of these areas, and some with what we used to call in my family spontaneity, which is actually impulsiveness, part of the hyperactivity, impulsivity angle of ADHD. But for me, I just went and got medication. For my daughter, she got through school. Everything lifted within a really quick period of time. The medication was amazing until it wasn't. So for her, she lasted on it for about 4 years. By the end of the HSC, she was scrambling. She did it, and she did well. She did really well, but it was so stressful. So
this is while she's on the medication?
Yeah. It stopped holding. So the one she was on, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
So you often end up needing more and more. Now I've been fortunate with mine that I haven't needed to go up. I have days off as well. I take kind of little medication holidays,
a good
couple
idea.
of days here and there, so that I can try not to become too dependent. Some medications work better for people than others, but she ended up just needing more and more and more of it, but she wasn't getting the benefit of it properly, and it was very stressful.
Was she taking holidays or medication breaks as well?
Not during the final year, because she had to just keep working. She was at a really pressured school that kept her moving fast. So there wasn't really the space for that.
Yeah.
But she hasn't been on medication since the HSC. She finished it and she just said, I can't stand it. I'm off. And that's okay. It's her choices. It limits things like she didn't want to stay at university. And that's okay. She's got a relationship with her mind and body that is hers alone, and she's studying at TAFE, so
yeah, nice.
She's
cool.
Happy.
Yeah, awesome.
Really happy.
Yeah, it's great advice, because obviously I've been worried about the medication, and so I'm on dexamphetamines at the moment, 5 milligrams, and I take 2 a day, and I haven't been able to put them down purely because of how well everything's going at the moment, like work and everything, and I have full I have full intentions to be taking some days off, but I'm like, when am I going to stop taking them?
Well, maybe you just enjoy the fact that your brain's operating in a way that you haven't had this kind of bliss
Yeah.
And just
Well,
to
that's-
actually enjoy it. It doesn't need to happen now. It's just if you feel like it's not holding, then
Yeah.
maybe see what happens then. But just I think for you, Ash, it's a big thing to be diagnosed and clearly a huge amount of relief that
Yeah.
there's some help out there for you. So just enjoy this time and let your brain get some happy stuff happening. Like, just even home life being so relaxing. Just enjoy the benefit of it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
You going to get diagnosed, James?
I don't know. We're all on the spectrum somewhere, aren't we? All of us.
Yeah.
I wonder where I am on that spectrum.
It might be the baby that breaks the camel's back for you.
Yeah.
It might.
I definitely have those anxious perfectionist qualities.
Because
I'm very like go, but I can concentrate and focus very well. So I have that. I never feel like I'm scrambling. I'm very organised, but I can get thrown off sometimes if things aren't, the control. I think it's the control thing as well. I like how you said it's the fantasy, the fantasy of control. I was like, yeah, I get it. That's how I feel like on an aeroplane because you have no control on an aeroplane. I'm like, I'm at the mercy of the gods here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that one. I'm not a flyer. I do fly, but I hate flying, and it's the one area I just haven't been able to kind of gather myself properly. I'm a really bad flyer.
Oh, we had a bumpy ride today.
Did you?
Oh my God. Taking off is like, I'm like, I'm always looking
P-plater.
I'm not looking at people where is this normal? I'm pretty sure I let out a feel like, we were right on the back of the plane, it has like a little bit more turbulent. I'm like, I'm like, oh my God.
So that's the worst in the time.
Yeah,
there's so much
like this, right?
I always book on the wings.
Yeah, the wings is and it's also the safest because it's got the most structure on the plane.
Oh, I didn't
Because
know.
It's all lovely, isn't it? It's that fantasy again.
Fantasy of
Yeah. I'll go on the wings. That'll stop anything happening. Well,
Yeah.
what about business class? Nothing happens that goes wrong in business class, does it?
Yeah.
Just joking.
I'm also happy to fly over land. I wouldn't. This is my worst. If I was to give you my worst way of dying, would be plane crash in the ocean, not dying,
Jesus Christ.
and just bobbing up and down with a life jacket. It's funny.
It's quite an elaborate fear, this one, isn't it?
and then getting attacked by sharks.
Oh, so it's got the double, okay,
Yeah,
that's
but that's not until
mutilation.
Not
yeah, but I'm
not drowning?
Not drowning, or maybe I get nibbled by sharks.
Maybe
and
a
then,
shark drags you down.
Yeah.
I do need to promise you that you won't even get to the shark
Oh, really?
if there's a plane crash like that, yeah.
It's funny because you get those people running through the safety things every time. If this ever happened, I still wouldn't know where to blow, because I just tune out. I wouldn't know where the whistle is. I don't know where the chords are.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're speaking, and I'm
Headphones on.
Yeah, I'm like, I've watched it 1,000 times, and I don't think I'd know what to do if it happened. Yeah. Anyway, illusions of control. That's my. Yeah, sharks are an irrational fear for me. Anyway.
Cool. Well, should we wrap it up?
Could do. Have you got any anything else you'd like to add or anything?
Yeah, I think what I want to say is being in a relationship is a privilege, not a right. And I really want people to get that we can be with someone, but it doesn't mean it's going to last, or it doesn't mean it's going to be of quality. So if everybody really is responsible for what they bring to a relationship, and they bring 100%. Like I've had so many people in therapy with me say things like, I'm only 50% responsible, you're responsible for the other 50. And I'm just like, nah, cut that crap out. You are 100% responsible for yourself in this relationship and what you do. And I think for me, I'm just on a journey that is trying to help people see that they actually need to do the work, and not just expect their partner's there for them, that our partner was not put on this planet for us at all. It's not their job. There's nothing that they should have to do above and beyond anything. Respect, yes, that's nice. But I think the more that we can just see them as a separate individual and we keep doing our work and not impose things on them, we'll all be so much happier for that.
Yeah,
I've seen many, many destroyed relationships when people don't see that.
Are they like unrealistic expectations of your partner?
Absolutely. And now even people talk about the love languages. Now I don't have a problem with identifying one's love language. That's all very nice. But I don't believe it's our partner's, it's not their job to make it right for us. Why don't we do the work and say, hey, why is that my love language? Why do I want you to go and buy me a piece of cake when you're out and think of me? Why do I need that? So if we can all sort of grab our needs and wants and desires and ask the question, why do I have that? Be curious. Don't judge them, but just be curious. Then we're not going to be imposing, you didn't get me cake on the way home. You went past the shop. Whatever it is, whatever their love language is. So it's how do we give freedom to our partner to be them, and we do the work on ourselves and not keep looking at them and saying, why aren't you who I need you to be for me to feel safe?
Yeah, it's really good. And I heard Jay Shetty say something really good today as well, just because, and it was around the quality time love language. It's like, just because you're spending time with your partner doesn't mean you're spending your energy with the partner or you're present, because you could be both there on your iPads.
Yep.
But, we've just gone on a holiday together, but we weren't present with each other. We were in our own little silos. So it's really important that you're also sharing that energy with each other, not just the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a really great.
Actually, on that, how much damage would be caused by a couple that aren't getting along, and then they're sitting there watching a perfect world on Instagram, scrolling? Like, is that is that like sort of a fuel onto the fire sort of situation?
Great question. It's because they feel very ashamed often. For a lot of couples who are in the land of hell together, they've got a lot of shame. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of distress, and then they see these beautifully curated images, and they know that they're nothing like that.
Yeah. So get off the iPads and off.
Have a conversation, or go to therapy, do the work, read some books. There's lots of there's online courses for people to help their relationship and communicate better. I've got one online. It's called Fight Less, Love More. But there's lots of help out there. Great podcasts. Yeah. People are doing amazing stuff. So
like Accidental Fatherhood.
Accidental Fatherhood.
Of course.
So just people need to do the work.
Actually, can I? I gave some advice to a friend the other day who was having a bit of trouble with their partner. Not trouble, but and I was like, you just go home and force the issue and have sex. Just force sex. Is there any...
Forcing sex?
Well, not forcing. No, Jesus.
There is consent, I think you're saying.
Full consent.
Oh, my God.
But, you don't always want to... Like, when you're arguing with your girlfriend, you don't want to... You're like, well, I don't really find you attractive. Some people, I guess, would. There's been times where it gets hot and heavy when you're having an argument. But is there anything... Like, obviously, you're not attracted to them at that time. But is there any, psychological evidence to say, it's a good way, it's a good tool to actually get things back on track?
Yeah, totally.
Not forced in.
Well, you're talking about kind of having a planned session in some way.
Yeah.
Making sure that it happens as opposed to just getting left off the agenda.
Like scheduling sex. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And it's really a good idea, because what I see is, especially after having kids, some people don't really get back into it. Not properly, and sex becomes about making the next child, but not as much about the couple. Mm-hmm. Having sex you didn't get this experience, but having sex to be in a couple is very different from having sex to become parents. It's a different quality, because it's got something different in the mind. Yeah, you had it for 12 weeks, and it was good, right?
Yeah, it was great.
It's different. It's different sex, but. What I would say is it's really important to keep having sex. It's an incredibly special glue between partners, and it's the thing that makes us different from flatmates, from siblings, a friend, anyone else. Having sex is important. I wouldn't force it, but I would make sure it's happening. And I was reading something the other day that said for couples who put it in, say, once a week, that they actually schedule it, what they often find is it's like a muscle, and then they end up having it in between as well. Yep. So they end up wanting it. They're drawn to each other more because they're enjoying that glue aspect of it. So, definitely. Never let it get off the agenda.
I also think for men, that's sometimes what we need for intimacy as well, and feel connected to our partner. It really is a really strong, intimate connection. For men, sometimes need that kind of... I know for me, when I have sex with my partner, afterwards I just feel really connected to them. It feels really intimate and brings us together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels really good.
That's for a lot of men. And I think you're raising an important point that women will look at that and say, he just wants to have sex. But what often gets missed is what you're saying. It's not just sex. Otherwise you could just masturbate if it's just about getting off. It's actually connection and feeling that intimacy and knowing that you've got this thing together, this important contact. So I think it's really important, because when things start to turn south for couples, women will often revert to, he just wants sex. It's not true. Some do, but most want that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're not as necessarily as wordy, and they don't have to be. Not everyone has to use their words in the same way. It's great that you can, but lots of people can't.
Yeah.
And sex is like, take out 40,000 words and have a good time together.
Can't be bothered talking, let's have sex.
Yeah.
It's my love language.
Yeah, what's going on here? I'll tell you in the bedroom. Go get naked.
Yeah.
If you'd like.
Yeah, it's awesome. Some really good words. So, Lissy, where can people find you? We'll put some links in this episode, but where can people find you, and where's your book available? Do you want to just share some of that?
Sure. My book's available at all leading bookstores across the country, online as well, at Dimmicks, Angus and Robertson, Booktopia, Amazon, those ones. It can also be purchased on my website, which is lissyabrahams.com, and on there I've got resources and blogs and ebooks that people can have a look at. They can join the community. It's a sweet little community at this point. And as I mentioned, there's a course there as well, which has a personalisable guide for people to work through that journey on their own. Yep. It's deeper than the book, but they go really well together.
And who is this perfect for? If you were to say this is perfect
anyone in a relationship, to be honest.
Yeah, awesome.
Even if they're not having difficulties, it's really that, how do you do you in a relationship and do the best you?
You want to recommend it to single people?
Yeah,
wanting
absolutely.
to work on there before, if they've got issues working on themselves before they get into a relationship.
Or they've just been in one and they want to understand what happened to it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, cool.
And a lot of it also applies to friendships, colleagues at work, what we're doing there. You know, they're relational, the wiring's there.
Yeah.
Depending on where we are. It's just that it's most intense with our partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because how you show up in one area of your life is how you show up everywhere, right? And it's your interpersonal relationships with anyone, but it's concentrated when it's just together.
Yeah, that's the word, concentrated. It's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing your gift with everyone, Lissy, and coming along. And you came from Sydney as well, which is awesome to have you here in person. So
thank you for having me. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lissy.
So much.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next episode.
Great.